Welcome to the next episode of In Conversation with Sinfonia Cymru. My name is Simone Willis and I'm a trustee. I'm also a researcher in musicians' stress and wellbeing. Today we're going to be interviewing Caroline Pether, who is a violinist and leader of the orchestra. So in terms of your background, I just want to know about what were your early musical experiences? How did you get into playing the violin?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate that both my parents absolutely adore music and just had it playing in the house all the time. And I have 3 siblings as well, and they all play musical instruments too. We actually kind of rather geekily make up a little string quartet, the 4 of us. So we used to play together a lot as kids. But yeah, I think my parents just really wanted us all to just, enjoy music making and get a lot out of it. I don't think they ever sort of wanted to push us into being professionals, although 3 out of 4 of us did end up doing it professionally. But I think they just really wanted us to have that enjoyment, basically, and fulfillment that we all get from playing a musical instrument. So that's how it started. And I had lessons with Lucy Akehurst, who's a kind of a bit of a celebrity in Birmingham in the music scene. She kind of teaches a lot of the younger kids, particularly from beginners. So we studied with her at the Junior Birmingham Conservatoire. So that was the beginning of my musical life.
That sounds like a really nice way to get into music, a really supported introduction. Like your parents just wanted you to get whatever you could out of it, not to push you down achieving something really.
Yeah, they've always been that way, that they wanted us all to experience. We all did other things as well, but they always wanted it to come. They sort of introduced us to music, and then they sort of really left it up to us as to whether we would carry it on. Although my mum was, she was incredible. She would sit down and practice with all of us in those early stages. So she would do, we all play piano as well. So she would sit down with all of us for half an hour on each instrument every day. So she was doing kind of collectively 4 hours practice a day, which is mad, really. It's such commitment. But she just, I think, really wanted us to kind of, I suppose, to get the most out of it in those early stages. But yeah, we're really, really lucky, very fortunate.
That sounds lovely. Although quite a lot of practice for your mum.
Yeah, it was. She's a piano teacher as well, so she was kind of doing the lessons with the students and then practicing with us. So she really had her work cut out.
I'd just like to talk about some of the roles that you have outside of Sinfonia Cymru. Can you tell us a little bit about what else you do?
Sure. So I also work with another chamber orchestra, actually, Manchester Camerata, and I'm one of 3 co-leaders there. And yeah, it's kind of has a lot of similar values and ethos to Sinfonia Cymru, wanting to explore different ways of presenting concerts, wanting to collaborate with artists from different genres, very committed to the work that we do with the local community. So it's kind of interesting that I've ended up working for 2 orchestras that have this culture, and I just think I'm really drawn to organisations that are sort of searching for those things. I also teach at Birmingham Conservatoire, so I teach there 1 day a week. And I'm also part of I'm in a duo partnership with Camerata's principal cellist, Hannah Roberts. So we do concerts and performances together. So that sort of sums me up. I do a few bits and bobs of other things as well, but those are sort of the main things.
That's a lot of hats to wear.
Yeah, it is. But I do find that the teaching massively informs both my playing and vice versa. They feel so connected to me. They don't feel separate at all. And I wondered, for you, Simone, you also do a fair few different things. You're doing your work with your research, and then you're also on a trustee for Sinfonia Cymru, but also Orchestras Live. Do you find that those 2 things, that they inform each other also, and that there are kind of bridges that go between your 2 areas of work?
Yeah, definitely. I think sometimes I feel like my roles don't seem like it makes sense how they all fit together, But so I went to conservatoire, and then my research project naturally came out of my experiences. And those experiences feed into discussions we have as trustees. So it all fits together. And then similarly, my work at Cardiff University just came out of what I was doing in my PhD, even though it's in a different topic. The methods that are used are very similar. So yeah, when I look at the whole thing, it makes sense to me.
How did you go about making that decision to go into research? What sort of informed that decision?
So for me, when I was at conservatoire, I felt like it was a very pressured environment. I experienced it as quite stressful. I had been to junior conservatoire, but the pressures at a conservatoire are much more intense, and I needed to improve my technique, and just the amount of practice I needed to do. And I always had this feeling like I'm running to catch up with something that's ever escaping me. And so for me, it was quite a difficult experience. And I talked to friends, and I sort of had this sense that actually this wasn't an uncommon feeling, and that people were struggling with all kinds of mental and physical health difficulties. And so I sort of got interested in performance psychology specifically in my undergrad, and then that sort of broadened out into the general issues that musicians have to deal with. And that's really where my interest in the research came from. And I just happened to be speaking to a sports psychologist. I'd gone for a few sessions, and he also worked at the university, and said, "Oh, would you be interested in researching this? I think it's great. It's really interesting, very similar to sport." And so it was just a natural progression.
That's great. I mean, how interesting, you've listened to other people's experiences and kind of really sort of digested your own experiences, and now you're translating that into something that's really going to help people. Just discovering some trends amongst everybody's lots of people's experiences. As you say, it is definitely a pressured environment at music college, music colleges, they're still very much white majority spaces as well. There's for black people, for people from different backgrounds, that is like an extra hurdle for people to have to overcome. And I just wondered what your personal experiences were of being in those white majority spaces.
Yeah, this is something I've been really thinking about a lot. And I've sort of grown up being in those spaces. So I went to junior conservatoire, and I also went to a private school that wasn't particularly diverse. And so I'm sort of comfortable being in this space, but you are always aware that you're different. And so I would say there's, some sort of disquiet. It's not in the foreground, but it's in the background. And until recently, people haven't talked about it. And so if I had wanted to talk about it, then the onus would have been on me, a minority, to bring something like that up, which is, I think that creates an extra pressure. And then some of the other things I've been reflecting on is sort of the classical music, like what repertoire are we presenting to people? And I remember, I think I was in my last year, just really struggling with what was being offered and thinking, I don't really fit into this. How can I express it in a way which feels authentic to me? And I searched so hard for repertoire. I can't tell you, I am just trying to find this fits me. I don't think I really managed to find it in the violin. And I think just the way we teach classical music, it needs to be more inclusive, so that it's not something that, just one day you're going to have to go and find this. It's separate from, the repertoire that we normally teach. I think we, really need to take an integrated approach so that people feel included, whoever they are.
Yeah, definitely.
So, in terms of thinking about working with music that is outside the standard repertoire, this is something that I've seen a lot in Sinfonia Cymru concerts. What's your experience of that, Caroline?
Yeah, it's been really fun actually to be involved in the programming aspects of the concerts, and it is something that I really love about working with the orchestra is that they first of all they're already searching to play different kinds of music from different genres and different composers, maybe composers that people don't regularly get to hear. And then also involving us players in those decisions as well. So they're getting even, it's kind of growing the pool of of information and inspiration of the people who are involved in that decision. So yeah, I think it's been great actually, and really enjoyed that relationship with the management.
And in your role as leader, just wondered how long have you been leader of Sinfonia Cymru, and how did that come about?
Yeah, so I've been playing with the orchestra a fair bit of time now. I think the first project I did was in 2014 with them. And then I think I was gradually doing more and more projects. And at that time, Bartosz was the leader, fantastic violinist. And then he kind of finished his time with the orchestra. And then I was coming in a few times as a guest leader. And then after a couple of years of that, Pether and I had a conversation about making that a more sort of official, permanent thing. And I think really a sort of main motivating factor for both of us with that was really just we both really wanted that role, I think, to almost sort of connect the management to the players even more, because I think that culture was there, but of course, because of the nature of the orchestra, it's not a membered orchestra. Trying to have those lines of communication going through and the feeling of building on what you're doing from project to project. I think we both felt like setting that role would enable that to happen even more. And we've been, that has been the case, and it's been really enjoyable to see that grow and to see, I think, that more holistic approach between management and players, everybody working together and communicating well. It's been really, really great to see.
And that's really nice to hear about. And in terms of communicating with management and players, I think from my research, that's something that can impact on the well-being of musicians. Do you think that that's been your experience, or...?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, that was one of my questions for you, so I'm glad you brought it up. Because, I was reading that in your research, and as soon as I read it, I thought, wow, this is so much of what Sinfonia Cymru is about, looking to give players more autonomy, helping them to develop more skills, and giving them more of the creative reins, I suppose, of what the orchestra's doing. And I was reading in your research that a lot of people that don't have those things that really impacts their well-being in a negative way. I definitely see that happening in Sinfonia Cymru, and it's great to see. And I wondered whether, from your perspective, did you, in terms of yourself becoming a trustee with the orchestra, was that seeing that part of your decision to be involved, or was it something that as a trustee you kind of helped to cultivate, or a bit of both?
I think being a trustee, that's definitely something we've talked about in our meetings, and how giving players that sense of agency is so important for their development, but also for their well-being.
Yeah.
I think it did, the thing that drew me most to Sinfonia Cymru is probably the age of the players. Being a young trustee myself, I can really connect to that. I have done some freelance work, so I know what it's like within the industry. And also just seeing such a range of performances, performances that I haven't seen before, not just a traditional orchestra, but chamber works and just combinations that are a bit less usual, really.
Brilliant. And I wondered as well, Simone, I think actually a lot of players have no idea what board members and trustees do. I think a lot of them they're just sort of like, oh, oh, that's great, but they don't actually know what happens, and I was wondering if you could share a little bit with us what the role of trustee is and what kind of things you've experienced in that role.
I think it was the same for me. Before I became a trustee, I actually didn't really know what it was or actually consider myself as becoming a trustee. So what the main reason I would say is that it's to ensure good governance of an organisation, and that is, public funding is being spent in Sinfonia Cymru. We get money from the Arts Council Wales, and that the public should be involved in that, and that's one of the roles of trustees. Ensuring that the money is spent on, what we say we're going to spend it on, and that is something that is worthwhile and that people value. So that's one aspect. Another aspect is to, be a sounding board or a critical friend, or to challenge the orchestra. I can say, do you think we're doing enough for diversity? Are we supporting the musicians' well-being? What, do we need to offer more professional development? So bringing my own expertise and also my own lived experiences into that boardroom. I think it's really important that we have, a range of voices in that room, so that, we make sure we're a resilient organisation and that we appeal to a range of people, not just audiences, but to a range of musicians as well.
That's great to hear you talking about that, and I'm sure a lot of people have learned a lot just now about what you guys do, because I think actually often, especially shaping the culture of an organisation, the trustees and the board have a huge impact on that in a way that maybe not everybody understands. So that's great to share that, and you're absolutely right that a range of representation in that space is so important if we want to see the change that we all want to see.
Exactly, and I think, the connection is that, the meetings we have and the board papers and the business plan, they all connect to that organisational culture. So it doesn't sit outside the organisation, or the management level's not like on top, but it's really an integrated part of the orchestra.
I certainly feel that it impacts the music making, because I feel released by the organisation to express. I feel trusted by the organisation to express in the way that I think will really reach audiences, and that feels very fulfilling to me, that we're kind of all talking to each other and having these conversations as a looking at it from a bigger picture.
And I think for me, being a young board member has been, it's been really insightful as well. So that organisational culture is just such an important aspect of the orchestra. Like you say, that dialogue's important for you. I think it's just as important for the trustees to have that dialogue as well, and to know the musicians, and to talk to them, go see them perform, see their enjoyment, know that what we're doing has a direct impact and feeds into something larger.
Definitely. And you really feel that sense, especially when we do the concert in Cardiff, and afterwards we get to meet all of you guys, and you feel that from you all. The players feel that you're all willing us to do well, and that, you often come out of the concerts buzzing and saying how much you enjoyed it, and it's really great to kind of, to feel that connection with you all.
That's great to hear. In terms of your Sinfonia Cymru experience, do you have a favourite moment at all?
This is a tough question, because I've had some really, really good, so many, many good moments with the orchestra. But I think probably the highlight for me was we did a project. Let me get this right. I think it was a couple of years ago now, just under a couple of years ago, and we performed. So it was like a string orchestra and directed by myself, and we did the Vivaldi Four Seasons in the second half. I think that was possibly just clinching the title of my favourite project. I think partly the reason for that was just that I had put so much energy into the preparations for it, and I really kind of spent a lot of time thinking about, the whole programme and how we were going to reach the audience most effectively. And, you know, of course, when I'm leading, I'm always bringing my full self and committed a lot to a conductor's vision or a visiting artist's vision. But because I was directing this project and I was doing the solo as well, it was very personal. But I was really blown away by the musicianship of my colleagues. You know, they all just really went for everything with so much kind of full-bloodedness, and they just went for it, and they were very generous in their approach to things I was asking them to do. They always had a yes, we can do that attitude, which is just really it's such a joy to work with, because you know that you're asking people of things, and to know that people are going to say, yeah, let's do it, rather than any sort of reluctance, or, you know, it's such a great feeling, and the concerts were just so much fun.
I did go and see that concert, and it did look like you were all having a blast on stage.
Yeah, yeah, we really were, and it feels great when you know, if you have that feeling on the stage and you feel like that's really going out into the audience as well. We wanted the audiences to really enjoy it too. We got some really wonderful feedback from audiences from those concerts. You know, some people who'd said it was one of their favourite experiences at a concert ever. And that's when you really kind of think, oh, you know, this organisation is doing something really special, you know, that it's kind of, creating reactions in people that are so strong. And also there were quite a few people who came to those concerts who hadn't really gone to very many classical concerts before, and they also reacted really positively. So that's really like such a bonus for us, you know, if we feel like we're reaching more and more people.
I do think that's one of the things that's special about Sinfonia Cymru, like that collegiate atmosphere between the musicians. I don't think you don't see it in all orchestras, and it's really nice to watch it on stage. Okay, thanks for joining us today, Caroline. It's really lovely to talk to you about your Sinfonia Cymru experiences. And thank you to everyone who's listened or watched us here on this episode of In Conversation with Sinfonia Cymru.
Bravo!